Should we be concerned about censorship in science? Find out the details here today on Jimmy Rants. And if you're watching this live here on Instagram, we are at Jimmy Rants. If you're brand new to the show, we simulcast over on my Facebook page and YouTube, but Jimmy Rants Instagram page is where we originate the show. Thank you guys for being here. The website's jimmyrants.com. All the past episodes are there. We do also keep a copy of the show right here on Jimmy Rants at Instagram on the IGTV feed. We also have the past episodes up over on YouTube. If you type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show there. We do all kinds of topics on this show. I'm Jimmy Moore, so I rant, but I don't really rant in the traditional sense that a lot of people think. I had a lady call me out yesterday when I was talking about coming back, and she's like, I don't think I want to watch somebody rant and yell at me the whole time. I was like, ma'am, have you ever actually watched my show? No, I just refuse. My Christian values don't let me go and see anything that rants. I'm like, bleh. Get a life, lady. Watch the damn show, and you know I don't rant in the traditional way. But I am so glad all of you guys are here today. Thank you for being here. And guys, I am loaded for bear this week with all kinds of topics. Today we're going to talk about censorship in science. I got a nice little op-ed piece on that. Tuesday, I'm going to talk about the C word. We all know what that is, that virus thing out there, and how it could be used as a possible role. The ketogenic diet could be used as a possible role in that. So a nice brand new paper just came out on that topic. Then on Wednesday, we'll talk about that study. It came out just after I left about eating one egg a day, increasing your risk of developing diabetes. So that's coming on Wednesday. On Thursday, we'll talk about the big story. I've seen a lot of people commentating on it on social media about Coca-Cola funding public health conferences to try to shift the blame away from them for obesity. And then on Friday, we'll do the traditional Ask Me Anything that I always do on Fridays. So if you're brand new to the Jimmy Rants show, welcome. Good to have you. And stick around because I think we do a pretty cool show. Who likes the show here? Just show of hands. Who likes Jimmy Rants? Who missed me while I was gone for 5 weeks? I see my brother Nathan just popped on over on the Facebook page. What's up, Nat? You doing all right? All right, so let's get this show on the road. Thank you so much for being here. Censorship is a big deal here in 2020. From the social media pages, the things that they're doing to silence voices that go against the grain, so to speak. Those are things that, I guess they have the right to do it as businesses are able to pretty much conduct business as they see fit. So if you're on Instagram, you're on Facebook, you're on YouTube, you're pretty much at the mercy of all of these entities because they are private businesses that have the right to do what they want to do. So a lot of people, they don't have the right to censor people. Actually, they do. Now, they do have that whole Section 230, which prevents them from being sued for things that are said on their platforms. And so that does kind of shift things a little bit, that they're more than just a private business. They're being given special privileges because of that willingness to be open. And now they're censoring. So that's one form of censorship that we have seen quite a bit of this year with the virus and with a lot of things that have been put out there. But what about in science? Have you guys noticed that in science that they are starting to silence some voices? And we pretend like this has just started happening. Let's be honest. I've been out here in the nutritional health space for 15 years. And I can tell you, when I first got into this community and started kind of hanging out with a lot of the researchers in this realm, they would tell me stories of, because they look into low carbohydrate diets, they're pretty much blacklisted, censored from being able to share science that's put out there and data that they see. And of course, we pretend like, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's an important tangent for us to touch on. We hear out there that we need to trust the science. Who's getting tired of that obnoxious phrase? We just need to trust the science, as if the science is one singular thing and that it can't possibly be challenged. Guys, the very essence of challenged is we don't know what's going on. We don't have all the answers. Therefore, we need to be having these discussions amongst ourselves of what the answers are or could be. And so whenever you hear, well, we need to follow the science on masks, we need to trust the science on lockdowns, and you kind of go, okay, but science isn't an absolute. Science is a fluid process. It's where you have tit for tat. One person brings in one perspective, someone brings in another perspective, and it's through the sharing of both of those perspectives and maybe a few others that you kind of come to a conclusion. Unfortunately, the science has become one thing and one thing only, and if you shift from that narrative of what that one thing only is, guess what? You're told to shut up, and in many cases, you are outwardly censored from being able to share. Guys, that has never happened to the degree it's happened in 2020. 2020 has sent censorship in the scientific realm to a whole new level. And I don't know about you, but it isn't going to end well if we get there. And so what we're going to talk about here today is censorship in science matters. Censorship in science, it matters. And we must open it up for debate again. Because if we stop debating science, guess what happens, you guys? You don't want to hear this, but this is what will happen. Indoctrination. Indoctrination. It's one reason why I think we need better education that teaches kids why science is so important, why having varying opinions is important. It's somewhat of a lost art in this day and age. You're not allowed to have an alternative view that runs counter to the mainstream, and yet that's where we are. And so I want to read from this story. It was in MedPage today, and this was from just a few days ago. This came out. It was an op-ed entitled, "We Should All Care About Censorship in Science," written by this medical doctor, Vinay Prasad, a hematologist, oncologist, as well as an associate professor at the University of California, San Francisco. He is the author of a book entitled "Malignant: How Bad Policy and Bad Evidence Harm People with Cancer." And he's going to stay generalized to the scientific realm, even though his expertise is in cancer, because it applies. And we've seen this, like I said, in the low carb keto research world. People like Dr. Jeff Follick and Dr. Steve Finney, that man back there on the wall, Dr. Eric Westman. I could go down the list of all these researchers, Dr. Dominique D'Agostino, that look into ketogenic diets and the mechanisms that take place for chronic disease and different things. And every single one of them will tell you, oh yeah, I've been silenced, I've been censored, simply because I'm looking at this subject. And so, because it's in the news with the virus, with masks, with lockdowns, we need to take a closer look at this. So let's read what the op-ed has to say from Dr. Prasad. "Over the last few months, I have seen academic articles and op-eds by professors retracted or labeled as fake news by social media platforms." All right, let's stop there a second. What gives social media platforms the right to challenge scientific evidence? If someone is a researcher and they're getting something published in an academic medical journal, or they're providing an op-ed in a journal that passed some kind of editorial review, why would social media platform companies think that they have more knowledge about that science than they do? And I'm not somebody that says we automatically appeal to authority. I think just the opposite. You as an individual should be thinking for yourself and coming up with the things that make the most sense to you based on your empirical knowledge and experience, and looking at all the things and then coming to your own conclusion. That's called critical thinking. We all possess that, whether we're a researcher with a MD or PhD behind our name or not. You have the power to critically think for yourself. And so the social media platforms, though, have taken over and fact-checked and put labels of fake news or misinformation, or this has been disputed. We're seeing it hot and heavy right now in the post-election, and it's not going to go away. And I think once they've opened that Pandora's box, they're going to continue to do that. Oftentimes, there's no explanation provided, and that's true too. They just censor them and silence them, remove them. Remember earlier this year that group of doctors that was talking about hydroxychloroquine, and they made this huge speech in front of the steps of the Supreme Court, I believe it was, and they basically had this video that was up on Facebook, taken down. It was up on YouTube, taken down. I tried putting it on my Instagram feed. It got taken down. So they actively did not want that information out there. And at the time, I remember doing a Jimmy Rants about this. I said, what is the harm in information? Information does not harm. Information informs. Isn't that? It's right there in the word information, is inform. And so if we're trying to inform, even if it's the wrong information, hear me clear, and they're going to articulate it. Dr. Prasad articulates it in his article here. Even if the information is wrong, it lets you have the discussion. It lets the debate take place so that people who have knowledge of this can say, now, wait a minute, I know about this subject. It's wrong because. Then the people that make the statements, then they could say, oh, you think it's wrong because, but what about this? And I think you're wrong because, and you have that debate. But unfortunately, that version of debating is gone in the United States of America today. It's not allowed apparently anymore. And so that's the frustrating part. If you're just joining us, yes, I am back on Jimmy Rants again. Thank you so much for being here today. We are talking about censorship in science and how much it matters, and that we must open it up for debate again. Because if you stop debating, I grew up in a world in the 1980s where debate was healthy. Debate was encouraged. You wanted people to have different viewpoints. I remember in school, I had debate class, and sometimes they'd kind of have you come into the class and you would have a specific issue that you fell on one side or the other. And the teacher would kind of figure out what that is. Guess what the teacher would make you do? The teacher would make you defend the opposite view. So if you were against abortion, you were pro-life, they made you fight for the side of having abortions and making them legal and blah, blah, blah. That will make your mind go in a whole nother direction. But the purpose of it, and why the teacher teaches that, is to get you to think critically and to make arguments clearly, even when you disagree with those arguments. And that's so good for your noggin. And I fear for these kids today because they don't seem to have any critical thinking skills. They don't seem to like debate. And the reason they don't is social media companies, even science is now censoring those things. This is not going to end well. I'm concerned about this heavy-handedness and at times outright censorship. At the same time, I note that others do not seem to be troubled, and that's troubling. The fact that censorship is happening in the realm of science and nobody seems to be troubled by it is a major concern, and we should all be concerned. Because if they're going to say trust the science, but then we're not allowed to see all sides of science, can we really trust it? It's almost like, listen to what we say or else. That's kind of where we are. You guys feel the slippery slope of that? It's not going to end well. Some point out that much of the scientific literature is problematic or flawed, and that scientists do a bad job of self-correction. Well, I can tell you, I've read many a study here on Jimmy Rants where the science is so bad, and it's so obviously bad. In fact, I've got a study coming up on Wednesday I'll be reading about eating 1 egg a day will increase your risk of diabetes by 60%. That was an actual study that got published about a month ago. I'm going to go over that one on Wednesday, go real slow through it, meticulously show you what bunk that is. But that's the kind of thing we're up against, guys, is the scientists themselves don't always put out good science. And so when somebody challenges their science, they're silenced. I think good science requires hearing all sides and then letting people come to the conclusion that they will. And then the other one that kind of nauseates me is, well, we have a consensus on the science. No, science is not based on consensus. It's not. As much as they want to make it a popularity contest, well, more scientists believe in this than that. You know there were people that actually believed the earth was flat at one point, right? And they believed it according to the science. They did. There's so many examples in history that I could give where they have claimed the scientific angle and that science that they were pushing was dead wrong. And they keep pushing this mass thing. Oh, the science shows the mass, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, there's more science that I've seen that shows exactly the opposite. And so we don't need to always appeal to science because these scientists can get it wrong. And in my book, Keto Clarity, in the very back of the book, it's one of the best parts, I think, of the book that I think people don't remember, is we tell you how to read science. And if you look at randomized controlled trials, that's generally the gold standard when it comes to science. You can still mess up an RCT, but it's a lot harder to mess up an RCT than an observational study or some cohort of studies where you're looking at some commonality. And my friend Brittany says, yes, there are definitely still people that believe in the flat earth. You're making my point exactly. Like, there's some people that just refuse to hear any other evidence. And that's what happens when you censor real science. More retractions are one step towards progress. I believe this view is very short-sighted, though. Censorship doesn't fix the problems in science, but rather it introduces new problems of its own. It's a problem that's easily remedied, easily rectified. Let's stop pretending like if you censor voices that there's not going to be ramifications for that. Do you know how many people, had they heard that group of doctors that came out, I think it was like May or June, when they did that video, and they talked about having hydroxychloroquine, Zithromax, and zinc. That was kind of their cocktail for helping people in the early stages of having this virus. Can you imagine how many people, had they heard that information, had they been given access to those preventative measures, would not have died or would not have seen very bad results from getting the virus? Yeah. And now, in hindsight, we now see that a lot of these therapeutics that are out there are working brilliantly. And they're helping people once they get this. You know, we're way down the rabbit hole now, deep into this virus that in March we didn't know about, but in December of 2020, we know abundantly about. And of course, they're pushing the big V word out there. And I've expressed my concerns in my previous Jimmy Rants all about the V word, why you probably need to avoid it, because it's just not, no. Please tell me you're not going to take the V word. Just no. Because it's, speaking of science, like, we've never in the whole history of science rushed a V word as quickly as these have. They skipped the animal trials. They brushed over some very adverse events that happened in the secondary trials. And then it got to the final stage, and they really didn't look at the totality of the population. So what do you do with that science? And if you censor that there are very good therapeutics that could take care of this at a lot less expensive price, and not have people go through the whole rigmarole of advancement of the progression of the V word, then or the virus. Sorry, I get that confused. I did that during that show. It's like the V word is the word, but the virus is what I'm referring to. All right, so let's get to the problems with science. I wholeheartedly agree we do have a crisis in science. And again, this is not new. I've been talking about it for over 15 years in my work in the nutritional health space. Think about how many scientists believe without a shadow of a doubt that saturated fat leads to heart disease and death. They believe it. How many people think whole grains are essential in the diet because it's based on the science? How many scientists have put out their studies looking at vegetable oil and saying that it's heart healthy? I mean, I could go down the line of all these things. How many scientists have looked at red meat and claimed that is leads to cancer and all-cause mortality? In other words, going to kill you. They put out bad science after bad science after bad science for generations. So this is not new. Most of my professional research agenda has sought to document all these failures. So again, this is Dr. Vinay Prasad, a medical doctor who is a researcher, has a master's in public health as well. The sheer number of low-quality, irreproducible findings boggles the mind. And that's the thing. When someone puts out a study and then someone tries to replicate what the results were in that study and they can't do it, and then someone else tries to replicate the results of that original study and they can't do it, and they can't do it, and they can't do it, at what point do we say that original study has to be bogus? Like, we can't keep pretending like bad science needs to be legitimized. But it has been. It's been allowed to proliferate. And it's why then you get other people who have nefarious intentions. They love the outcome of that research. They do a research paper on something slightly different, but then they cite that study. Then it gets into the zeitgeist of, well, we have well-proven science. Look at all these studies that we put at the end of our study, and those studies are just as crap as yours. That happens a lot, you guys. Fields like nutritional epidemiology. Don't get me started on nutritional epidemiology. It's the whole causation. It's not there. There's no causation there. It doesn't mean that's why things are, but they make it seem like it. Sometimes seems to be a never-ending series of flip-flop headlines drawn from dubious studies, which is what I was just talking about. Even in clinical medicine, we often adopt new therapies based on circumstantial, flawed, or limited information. Think about the statin drugs, for example. So as soon as we got a theory that LDL cholesterol was the reason why people were having heart attacks and getting heart disease, that's when they said, okay, we've got a therapy that lowers that LDL cholesterol. It's called statin medications. And so they take that statin and they push it. We can lower LDL by as much as 40%, Lipitor said in their ads. And so that's how these things proliferate. Years later, a fraction are tested in robust studies, and many of them are found not to work. That's exactly what happened with statins. I've quoted this study many times. It was in my book, Cholesterol Clarity, where they did a study looking at, in one hospital, at how many people were admitted to a hospital because of some kind of cardiovascular something. They had chest pain, they had a heart attack, something happened with their heart. And you would think that most of them would have high cholesterol, And because that was the narrative put out there, high LDL cholesterol. Well, guess what? What they found was about 50% of them had completely normal, healthy cholesterol. And a lot of those people were on statin medications. So we have studies that directly countered that it wasn't the LDL and that statins were not the answer to these heart attacks and angina and other things happening. It wasn't. And yet it was allowed to proliferate. Oh yeah, in the meantime, the statin medications alone, just that one classification of drugs, Lipitor, Crestor, Zocor, all these different ones that have been out there, $29 billion a year. It was the most successful drug in the history of the world. And it treated a condition that didn't exist. There's no such thing as high cholesterol. There's no disease called high cholesterol. And yet they put it out there as if there was one. My colleague Adam Sifu and I call this medical reversal. Reversal means we spent billions of dollars on medicines that really didn't help anybody. The incentives and structure of the scientific process that led to this error are in serious need of scrutiny and reform. Think about all those studies that identified LDL as the target when it comes to heart health. Think about it. Did they ever get scrutinized? Did they ever have any judgment befall them? No. They double down and they herald it and they say, look, this is our evidence. This is what proves why you need a statin medication. And so they never were held accountable. And in the meantime, billions upon billions of dollars spent on medications that didn't help. And people wonder why people don't trust, quote, science. Because science has been untrustworthy. This is why. And let me, a little bit of sidebar. So those of you in the nutritional health space, you follow my work for a little while, we've long been skeptical of, quote, the science. It's not that science is bad per se. We've just seen it bad within the realm of nutrition. And if they're lying to us about nutrition, isn't it a lateral move to think that the same agencies that tell us the food guide pyramid is wonderful and that we need to trust that, it's healthy and da-da-da, that now suddenly those same entities are out there within the government telling us that a vaccine is completely safe and effective? Are the same people telling us we need to wear a mask when we go out. The same people that are keeping people in fear over a virus with a 99.997% recovery rate for people under the age of 50. Like, come on. These are the same people. We don't believe them in the nutritional health realm, so why do we believe them with all this stuff around the virus? And a lot of us don't. I don't wear masks when I go into stores. I don't talk as well. Let's put that caveat out there. If you go to a store without a mask and they're okay with you being in there, don't be a you know what. Just keep your mouth shut. Don't talk. The only time I might be tempted to talk is if an employee says thanks for coming in. I usually just wave, but I don't open my mouth. But I don't feel compelled to wear a mask. And the only other place that I guess did make me wear some kind of a covering was Costco, and they gave me a face shield. So I've got the whole Darth Vader clear mask on when I go into Costco. They don't make me wear a mask underneath it. So that's how I roll in that store. But yeah, so much of the things they put out there is based on the science. Why are we believing them now about the science on these things? But yet we know they've lied to us about the science on diet stuff, right? At the same time, we must acknowledge that retracting articles in the absence of demonstrated fraud or error or one of the other tiny handful of reasons that warrant retraction is problematic. We cannot retract articles simply because we don't like the conclusion or the interpretation. We can't retract articles if others use them for malicious or unintended purposes. Let's go back to hydroxychloroquine for a moment. There was a pretty big study that said, oh man, if you take hydroxychloroquine, you're going to have such dastardly side effect events that we can't really promote it. Well, guess what? It was retracted. It was bogus from the start. But guess what? That was the reason why they had to censor those doctors promoting hydroxychloroquine. And so this alternative viewpoint got countered by bad science that then later got retracted, but then they didn't allow the doctor's video to come back. Do you see how the malicious and unintended purposes came into play with that example? And if that's happening right there out in the open, what is happening behind the scenes that we don't know about? What are things that maybe the public is having hidden from them that they need to know about? Like all of us on this show, if you watch Jimmy Rants, you're a critical thinker. You want to learn more. You want to kind of think at a deeper level about these things. That's my jam. That's what I do. I try to get you to think. And if you're going down that rabbit hole of thinking, don't you want all the information? Or would you prefer to only hear one side of things and that's all you hear? No, any critical thinker wants to hear as many angles of something as possible. You don't want to rely on any one angle because that's indoctrination. That's propaganda. Go back through your history books, people. Nazi Germany, that's how they convinced those people. And don't think China isn't doing it today with their people. Did you know China, there's certain parts of the internet China blocks them from being able to see. And they're not able to have the kind of information that they need to make good decisions because their government doesn't want them to be able to be critical thinkers. And let's face it, guys, United States of America ain't far behind. If we're having censorship in science, censorship on social media, they only want you to see one narrative and nothing else. Nothing to see there. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. That's where we are. Moreover, retraction is micro-dissection, while bad science is a widespread cancer. Ooh. Oh, the bad science. And guys, I don't know how we fix bad science because these scientists are being rewarded by companies that give them money to fund their science, by publications who have a certain bent and angle, talking about medical publications, which should be totally unbiased, but let's face it, they're biased. About the best one that's unbiased that I've seen out there, and you hear me on Jimmy Rants talk about these quite a bit, but it's the British Medical Journal. They're about the only ones that I'm aware of. Plus One has quite a few as well. But the British Medical Journal is on fire when it comes to making sure that all sides of an issue are heard and published. Other ones which are more prominent, Journal of American Medical Association, American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, very prestigious journals, but they have an editorial board that has a certain bent. And they know because of their prestige, they can get away with it. And they do. They publish bad science all the time. Retraction is inherently a tiny tool that can only make a minor change in the vast body of science. We cannot retract our way out of bad science. Here's the thing. Once you put bad science out there and people are allowed to see it and hear it, it gets the big splash in the media, all the headlines and all the everything, the damage is done. Pandora's box has been opened. And so if you suddenly retract it, that doesn't stop people from saying, oh my gosh, that was a wonderful study, and because it's already burned into their head that it's out there and that information, it becomes a belief. I did a Jimmy Rants about this about a year and a half ago, all about how we think when we hear something that we analyze it and kind of vet it out, and then we come to a belief. And the reality is, from psychologists, they will tell you, psychologists will tell you, the first inclination when you see something for the very first time is you believe it. And then some people go back later and vet it out and maybe come to a different conclusion. But most people read a headline and then they suddenly believe, oh, blueberries will make your nose grow. Oh, wow, I feel my nose growing already. Yeah. There is too much bad science. Most of it does not meet the criteria for retraction, and there are not enough people in time to adjudicate all the articles that may be erroneous. And again, I have one in my stack of stuff this week, actually Wednesday, talking about the eggs increasing diabetes. Bad science, which you'll find out why on Wednesday. But dang, how do you stop it? It's almost like you've got this wonderful gourmet meal. Let's just call it a soup. So you've made this nice, beautiful soup. Yeah, it's so wonderful. And then you drop a roach in there. Are you as thrilled about the soup now? But on top of the roach, we put a dead mouse in there as well. Okay. So in that soup, same soup, you dropped a turd in there. So then now you have a dead roach, a dead mouse, a turd. Are you going to drink that soup? Are you going to eat it at all? Of course not. It taints it all. And that's exactly what bad science has done to the scientific realm. That even when there's good science out there, it's hard for it to come clean because all the bad science that taints it. Now, if we had a separate bowl and we poured different things of soup before the cockroach, mouse, and turd got into the big soup bowl, into the crock pot, if you scooped out some first, that's the good science. Now you've got it separate from all that bad science, and somehow we need to put all the bad science in a big old crock pot and then throw that bad boy into the dumpster. And get rid of the bad science and hold higher standards for science so that this kind of thing doesn't get allowed to proliferate. That's how you're going to solve this. But that's going to take ethical scientists. That's going to take editorial boards willing to actually do science and not propaganda. That's why they censor. They only want you to hear one side. So let's talk about censorship for a moment. The dynamics of censoring. We must be honest about retracting, deleting, censoring, and labeling any article as false. Again, science isn't about coming up with absolute truth. People think there is the science. There is no such thing as the science. The science is looking at all of that and constantly looking at all of that and constantly keeping that line of communication open, that there's more than meets the eye here. And not just thinking it's one thing. Wear a mask. The science says so. Well, no, I've got some science over here that says masks are completely useless at a virus. So what do we do with this science? Oh, trust the science. The science says wear a mask. Okay, but what about... And you see, it's allowed to proliferate because they don't want to see science that doesn't fit their narrative. And there's plenty of science that does that. In the era of social media, there is a brand new dynamic. First, the vast majority of science interests only a tiny sliver of scientists. And this is true. Like, I didn't grow up a science guy. I was a word nerd. I loved everything about writing. So I'm a writer now. I'm a speaker now. I had to learn to enjoy science, or at least get into the subject matter. But there are people who are way into it. And especially in our realm, in the keto community, you've got people like Ivor Cummins and Dave Feldman. I'm going to insult a bunch of people that are great, like engineer minds and scientists. But all the scientists I mentioned earlier, Westman, Volek, Finney, Tom Seyfried, Dominic D'Agostino, it could go down the line of all these scientists. They're the nerds all up in it, okay? They're the ones that it's very interesting to them. And they want to keep up with it and want it to be ethical. The vast majority of the common people like us, we don't look at it that closely. Now, maybe in my audience, there are a lot more of you nerds like me that does like to keep up with it. But the vast majority of the general population, it's not even on their radar screen. They don't even look at science in the way that we do. Which is why I try to do so many Jimmy Rants interpreting science. Like I said, the rest of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I've got 3 studies I'm going to be going over. One of them good, one of them bad, and the other one kind of in between. So you'll see. but they need translation of science. We all live in silos, and some of us focus on a single receptor. These articles are unlikely to be criticized by the general public. Instead, the initial prerequisite to current censorship is that the topic of the article interests a good chunk of the scientists. Something like 5 or 10% of scientists active on social media need to be interested in the subject for it to matter. Which is why a lot of the virus stuff has been of interest, and you are starting to see more scientists kind of perk up on it. Across the spectrum, one's basically saying, yes, lockdown and masks and all the things we're doing are great. And then another side, masks and lockdowns are detrimental to the mental health and da-da-da. So you've got that debate happening within that realm. The second prerequisite is among those interested in the topic. The ratio of opinions is skewed. 95% of the interested folks believe the issue ought to be decided in one direction. And that's a problem. That's a problem. Because if you only want to be one direction and you don't have multiple kind of angles, you can't really have science. If we combine these observations, we see the danger of this kind of censorship. Amongst all the incorrect or debatable articles out there, only topics where a small, vigorous group can band together will result in labels or retraction. Any hot topic with a minority view is at risk of being expunged, and that's what we've seen again and again and again. We're not seeing the data, or at least having at the table to talk about the data, some of the concerns about the V word, for example, or about masks, for example. You're just not allowed to have that because, 95% of the folks thinks we need to go in one direction, so wear the damn mask and shut your mouth. They don't want to hear an alternative viewpoint. The folks hired by social media platforms to handle adjudication are no doubt smart, well-intentioned people. He gives them more credit than I do, but they are placed in an impossible situation as both employee of the platform and judge of the science. So these are the fact checkers out there, you guys. And I'm loving that we've got people that are fact checking the fact checkers. And the problem is these fact checkers have no face, no name. You're not seeing who's fact checking you. And if you have a fact check on the fact checkers, there's nowhere to adjudicate that with them to correct them. The temptation to simply side with the angry and vocal majority is likely too great. And that's what they hope for. They hope you roll over and just wear your mask. They hope you roll over and think hydroxychloroquine is whacked for the early stage of the virus. Just fall in line and become good little sheep like we want you to be. That's where we are. That's where we are. So there is a slippery slope. I feel obliged to point out the slippery slope of our current science practice. Today's censorship of ideas is largely around issues over the virus pandemic or papers that touch on social issues, but that is unlikely to be the case moving in the future. Attention could easily shift over to less common topics. In the future, the risk is that the myriad of players in biomedicine, from large to small pharmaceutical and device firms, will take their concerns to social media and journal companies. He makes an excellent point here. Think about how many times those of us in the keto, carnivore, paleo, real food space have talked about cholesterol not being the enemy in heart disease. Think about how many of us have talked about saturated fat is a part of a healthy diet when you limit carbohydrates. Think about all of the claims that people like me and others out there have made. Now, look at what they're doing post-election with these warnings, these fact checks. Look at what they've done to videos that they deem as misinformation and they delete. Is it not a far leap to think that they may target people that spread misinformation, not just about the election or about the virus or about anything else, but about nutrition? Don't think they haven't already been going in this direction for years, you guys. They have gone in this direction, but now they feel they have proven the concept of taking to social media and demanding one side of science over the other and not allowing all sides to be heard. And when that happens, tyranny, guys, tyranny. Because if enough voices get silenced, there will be rebellion. And that's where we're heading. And so I think a lot of what's happening with the post-election warnings and the virus warnings, misinformation, this has been proven, this has been disputed, this has been proven false, blah, blah, blah. They're just going to just shift it over from the virus and the election over to nutrition and over to all kinds of angles in our lives. Watch. It's going to happen. Watch. On a topic like cancer drugs, remember the guy writing this, Dr. Prasad, is an oncologist researcher. A tiny handful of folks critical of a new drug approval may be outnumbered 10-1 by key opinion leaders who work with the company. On a topic like medical devices, doctors bullish about a new device may far outnumber those with concerns. We run the serious risk that one corporation will persuade another corporation to silence any dissent. Given the breadth and reach of these platforms, the resulting effect could be devastating. You think? If you silence all voices except what the majority wants? Like, that sounds good. Oh, let the majority rule, let the majority... Yeah, but the Supreme Court has minority dissents vocalized as well. Anytime the Supreme Court does a decision, they hand down the majority opinion, but they allow the dissenting opinions in there as well. Why do they do that? Because they want you to see the arguments on both sides of the issue. Why is this hard for us to understand within the science realm, that we want all sides of issues to be seen and heard? That's productive. That's key, going back again to critical thinking. And if we're going to think and we're going to have an informed and intelligent population, it must happen. So why must we let people say the wrong things? That's been said. Well, we don't want misinformation out there. Things could be wrong and people could misunderstand. So listen to what Dr. Prasad had to say about that. We may have forgotten the reason we permit scientists to take gambles or to say things that may in fact be considered wrong or stupid or harmful by the majority of their peers. We do so not because most of these ideas are right, but because some tiny, tiny fraction of them might actually be right. Most of us are not Barry Marshall, whose ideas around H. pylori and peptic ulcers were heretical at the time, but ultimately were found to be true. Some of us may be exactly like him. Most of us are not Bernie Fisher, who randomized women to lipodectomy and mastectomy at a time when many considered the former to be equivalent to murder. But one amongst us might be like him. We tolerate ideas that make us feel uncomfortable or angry, not because most of them are right, but most of them are probably wrong. But here's the key. Some could be right. Only dialogue and argument can move us closer to the truth. Appealing to corporations to strike down speech and expunge all trace of it is a tactic of autocrats, tyrants, but not science. We can choose to ignore, to rebut, to discuss, and to retract rarely when the grounds have been met, and only after a formal due process ensuring justice and fairness. We should all care about censorship because of where we might be headed next. Once again, this was published in medpagetoday.com. Go look it up. Dr. Vinay Prasad, Prasad, an op-ed, We Should All Care About Censorship in Science. Go check it out, you guys. But it's definitely an interesting conversation to have. Because again, we've had it rammed down our throats. We need to trust the science, the science, the science, the science. And all year long that I've heard that, I'm thinking, There is no one science, guys. We need to tell people the science is all the totality of everybody engaging in the conversation. And the moment we stop engaging in the conversation is the moment I think science dies. Science is not propaganda. Science is not one view. Science is a multiplicity of views that then eventually we say, okay, this is what we believe, but we acknowledge that there are concerns from these angles, but this is what we believe. We'll continue to test all these theories that challenge what we believe. That's science. Science isn't something that's solid. Like I'm sitting on a couch. Science tells me that's going to be sturdy and I can sit and I'm going to be held up. But what happens if I fall? I guess science didn't really hold up. Science didn't tell me that if there's a weak board down there, it might crack through the creases there. We have to put legitimacy in having conversations and debate when it comes to scientific issues, or science as we know it is dead. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. We're going to come here first to Instagram, then over to Facebook, finally over to YouTube. Thank you all for being here today. And yes, I am back on Jimmy Rants. We've got Jimmy Rants all week long. Definitely have lots in store for you guys. I am loaded for bear this week. Go check out the past episodes, jimmyrants.com. And just a reminder, those of you not on Instagram, I now have an Instagram page just for Jimmy Rants. All of the shows will originate from there. The IGTV will be housed there. I made it easy for you to find. Go to Instagram and look for Jimmy Rants. It's right there. Would love to have you come join. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. All right, let's see who has good comments here. CKS of 3, some seem to only want to believe, quote, the science that fits their agenda or comfort level, or what makes them not feel like they might be wrong. No one wants to be wrong. We got to get over that. I agree with you. That's why people don't do that, is they don't want to be deemed as wrong. I'm okay with being found to be wrong if my intention in sharing information was good and that I had good intentions, but then through the conversations of what I shared and then someone else sharing more information that then superseded the information I had, I will gladly defer when I have been proven that I was wrong. And we have to be okay with being wrong. I know some people's brains, you don't do well with being told you're wrong. Humble yourself a little bit and realize being wrong is not the end of the world. Being wrong just means you were wrong. But at least you had a seat at the table of the discussion. And that's what we should always allow. I keep thinking, why does one accept the new science of a phone and buy the newest, latest phone, but not important things like your health and nutrition? Yeah, exactly. No V word happening in my house, says Jamie. Yeah, I don't think you're alone there, Jamie. I think a lot of people are giving the V word the middle finger. So doctors were accusing patients of non-conforming if they won't take the statin and cause trouble with the patient's insurance. Yeah. We could go, and I've done many a rants all about how doctors kind of have to play this game with their patients of when they have science that shows that a drug or other therapy helps lower cholesterol, because we found in science that LDL is the bad boy in your heart health. It never was proven, by the way. We've never had a study that actually showed, a randomized controlled trial that actually showed LDL cholesterol levels mean anything when it comes to your heart health. And yet somehow that science pervaded and got out there. Kira says there was a doctor in Oregon that got his license revoked for questioning anything on the virus. Yeah, I've seen that. And it's unfortunate. I know there's some doctors that have been like allowing their patients to come in without a mask on. He trusts them to socially distance and all that. And same thing, pulled their license. Sure did. It's crazy the different search results you get from Google in comparison to other search engines. Yeah, I like to go to DuckDuckGo now. If you search for something virus related or on the conservative political bent. Yeah, I've seen that too. Joshua, if a peaceful rebellion isn't possible, there will be a violent one. Yeah. I think at this point, it's inevitable. If they allow what they've been doing in 2020 to continue on as if nothing's wrong with what they've done, I think a lot of people put up with the censorship and put up with some of the things they made us do early on because everything was so new with the virus. But now we're so deep in and we know a lot more, and we realize a lot of the things that they did and still doing. God bless you guys that live in California. I would be marching to the State House and picketing in front of the State House with Gavin Newsom. That guy is a complete idiot. My God, like closing you down and shutting down, like, and I think about in New York City where there's one block of the borough open, but then one block over they have to close everything, and it's like that. It makes no logical sense. The virus would be dangerous here, but not there. And yeah, there's just so much being used. This is all being used, and the science is being used for people's personal and political gain, and that's unfortunate. Chris says, leading, educating, cutting through the BS. Trying to, man. Money and power always complicates things. It does. How will one ever learn if you never wrong? No one on earth knows it all. Yes. Yes. Well, I mean, that's why you took tests in school. Think about all the tests you took, and you're nervous. Oh my gosh. And then you took the test and you got a 94. Okay, I missed, a couple of answers. But you learned from it. Okay, what did I miss? Okay, how did I miss it? Why didn't I know that? And then you learn. Same thing here. Maybe some information comes into the discussion. You learn something that you didn't know that then you apply to your thinking, and vice versa. And I think that's the way it should be. It's a shame we have to articulate this clearly out loud. Duh, like we've been doing this forever. We've switched all of the devices in our home to DuckDuckGo. What a massive difference in searching the same info and then on DuckDuckGo. Yeah, it's amazing. If you guys still use Google, shift over to DuckDuckGo and you'll see what CKS is talking about. It's pretty profound, the difference. Thank you for sharing the straight truth. Appreciate you. Thank you, Chris. That's all I know how to do, man. And I have been missing talking to you guys here on Jimmy Rants. All right, thank you, Instagram. Let me pop over here now to my Facebook page. What's up, Facebook? Wow, look at all you guys on here today. Thank you for being here. I think you missed me. Welcome back. We love you. Thank you. They want control, says Vicky, because Big Pharma can't make money when they're being challenged. Well, they probably could, but they'd have to get more creative. I think they like the monopoly on the information and controlling what people see and hear and believe. I'll drink the purple Kool-Aid before the big V. Yes, Candace, I think many people are in the same camp. Debbie says, finally had my husband get the CAC scan. That's the CT heart scan that looks for the coronary calcium. After getting his score, his doctor finally stopped pushing statins. That's awesome. I don't wear a mask and I won't get the V word. Good. You're making my morning. Well, thank you. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things. I think I brought the right amount of passion. Daryl says there are leeches in science. Oh, I wish they were just leeches, but you're right. They are. And they're unabashed in what they do and say and believe. That's the unfortunate thing. Judy says, it seems anything I post, no matter what, if it is political or health, a sticker gets plastered over the top of it. Last night I posted a post about the National Rodeo Finals. Had nothing to do with anything, but they put a sticker underneath it to check out the truth about the election. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've even seen like members of the president's family just posting pictures of their family and not even like saying anything about anything. And same thing, they'll put the AP has called the election for Joe Biden, and so therefore we need to fact check you. And it's like, oh, look at my beautiful kids. It was like Ivanka's kids or something. And I'm going, why? Like, what? Doesn't make sense. Debbie says, welcome back. Finally get to hear your common sense voice again. Thanks for coming back. Yeah, Debbie, I missed you guys. That's why I decided to come back early. And yeah, thank you for having me back. I'm okay with being wrong when I'm absolutely proven wrong. Just get tired of people putting us LCHF keto people down. Seems to me that a lot of us like-minded here are the ones being attacked constantly. Well, I don't worry about them attacking me. I have truth and right on my side. And when you have that, you don't worry about people that say you're wrong or attack you or whatever for your beliefs. You stay confident in what you believe and why you believe it. So don't ever let that hold you back. In my county, the health district is deciding tomorrow if there will be mandatory masks and arrested and fined for not wearing the muzzle. Remind me to stay away from your county then, Debbie. I'm glad I live in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Literally the only store that has said anything to me about wearing a mask has been Costco, and that's because they have a national schedule that requires all their stores. And then they gave me a face shield that I don't even have to put anything over my face, just a face shield, and I wear that in there. Pretty much everywhere else, even like Best Buy has a big sign out front that says cannot enter without a mask. I walked in there yesterday, didn't say a word. I just walked in and had no mask on. I had an employee come help me with the thing I was looking for, and it was no problem. Don't make a big deal about it. But if they're going to have arrests and fines for not wearing a mask, my spouse has given in to the damn statins, says Sharon. Well, that's too bad. That's too bad, because there's definitely not a lot of science showing the efficacy of statin medications. All right, Instagram, I'm going to move you over just a little bit because I have my computer here for my YouTube. I dropped my iPhone 10 on Saturday, splat, and it just cracked the whole screen. And the guy internally, the outside screen was perfectly fine. The internal screen got busted to you know where. So they won't have the part until tomorrow afternoon. So I'm improvising today on the YouTube feed by having you on my computer. I hope the look is pretty good for you. It looks like the camera is doing pretty okay, but I can read the comments a lot clearer. Let's pull you in a little closer so I can see the comments here. Debbie says, I missed you. Thank you. I missed you guys too. Nice to see the audio improved. Oh, did using my computer help the audio? That's interesting, Christy. Thank you for that. Abel says he's back. Back in black. PJB gotta go. We'll catch the rest later. Thanks for being here. Hello, Turgay from Istanbul. Bill says great information. Thank you. Craig says science is not debatable. Trust me, I'm right. Said Ansel Keys, not a real quote. I made that one up. Yeah, but it's not surprising because that's pretty much what he said was, well, just trust me, I'm a scientist. And it's kind of like the trust me, I'm a politician. And no, I don't trust you at all. But thank you for playing. Have a nice day. So guys, like science does not need to be censored. Voices of dissent are not a bad thing. We've got to get that out of our minds, thinking that voices of dissent is somehow the worst thing that has happened to mankind. And the sooner we embrace dissent and realize that it helps you learn what you know, what you believe, and why you believe it, that's what dissenting opinions are about. So if you want to have a conversation with someone about not wearing a mask, with someone who says wear a mask, blah, 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 let's have the conversation and then have the evidence from both sides rather than, well, you don't believe in wearing masks, you're a this, you're a that, and you're canceled. That doesn't accomplish anything. Let's keep the debate lines open because censorship in science and quite frankly in life itself totally matters. That's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. You can join us live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, right here on Jimmy Rants at Instagram. So again, brand new username over on Instagram. Go look up Jimmy Rants, all one word as a username. It's right here on Instagram, and you can subscribe. And you will always get the live feed. If you turn on your notifications, you can always get the live feed when I go live at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. We also house the past episodes here as well on IGTV. So watch the replay there. If you missed this live, you can watch it on replay. We also put the replay up over on YouTube. If you type in a keyword Jimmy Rants, you will find the show. Guys, before I leave though, I have a brand new podcast that I started with my best friend, Brittany Davis. It's called One Step Deeper. So if you haven't heard about this, we had episode 1 last week. It aired. Episode 2 is coming up on Wednesday. So I'll remind you on Wednesday when I do Jimmy Rants to go watch that. But it's unlike any podcast I've done before. It totally is a mindset podcast based on some of the childhood trauma that she and I went through. We are the best of friends, and so we go deep in conversation. And so we decided to create this podcast that kind of took you guys along for the ride on that going one step deeper in conversation. So on YouTube over there, you guys can just type in into quotation marks, One Step Deeper, and it's the podcast that comes up. So go watch it there. We also have a One Step Deeper podcast Instagram page. So it's all one word, One Step Deeper podcast. Go check it out here. Then even here on Facebook, we have a One Step Deeper podcast community if you want to type that into a search on Facebook. So we're all over the place with this. Coming soon, we'll have a website. And very shortly after the website is finished, we will have the podcast version of One Step Deeper podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the places. So real excited to have that. And guys, you think I'm vulnerable on Jimmy Rants? Just wait till you listen and watch One Step Deeper. Brittany and I don't play, and I will warn you ahead of time, we're pretty raw in places as well. We go deep, we go real, and we don't hold back. And it's for the benefit, because I don't think trying to sugarcoat tough situations, tough conversations is the way to do it. So we don't. We just put it out there and we let you benefit from, I guess, the wisdom that we've gained from the things we've been through. So real excited. Last week we talked about welcoming in chaos and what that looks like. And so, yeah, we have so many things that we're going to be talking about. This week's about being in the moment of having things happening and how you handle that. Anyway, you're just going to have to subscribe and see what we're talking about. Again, it's over on YouTube for now. It will be coming to Apple Podcasts and all the other podcasting formats soon. But One Step Deeper podcast here on Instagram, One Step Deeper podcast community on Facebook. And that's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. We're going to pop off of here for now. Come back tomorrow. We've got something for the virus and ketogenic diets. Is there possibly a connection? I have a study in my grubby little hands that says there is. So I'll see you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern. Bye.